I'd like to call to order the July 9th meeting of the Onalaska Common Council. The time is 7 p.m. I will ask the clerk to call the roll.
Mayor Kim Smith,
Here.
Sean McAllister,
Here.
Dan Stevens.
I'm here if you can hear me.
We can. Stephen
But I'm
Knott
here.
is going to be arriving shortly. Mike Milkey.
Here.
Larry Jurassic,
Present.
Diane Wolf.
Here. Thank you. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty, and justice for all. Thank you, everyone, for that. The rules of the Onalaska Common Council and its subcommittees. This is a harassment-free forum. The city council and its subcommittees will be conducted in a courteous manner. Citizens, council, and committee members shall be allowed to state their positions in an atmosphere free of slander, obscene remarks, or threats of violence, and sufficient warnings may be given by the sergeant at arms or the chair at any time during the remarks. In the event that any individual shall violate the rules of decorum as set forth, such person may then be cut off from comment or debate. And welcome, Stephen Knott has now joined the meeting. Item 4 is public input. If anyone from the public would like to address the Common Council this evening, now is the time to do so. Please come up to the podium, state your name and your address, and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Would anyone like to address the Common Council this evening? Welcome.
Hello. Got me now? Okay. My name is Ben Fletcher. My address is N8314 Ducky Drive, Holman, Wisconsin. Hello, my name is Ben Fletcher. I'm the store manager at the Onalaska Holman Lindsay Paint location. As my earlier correspondence with the planning department during their committee's findings pertaining to the exception of the mural permit, I take full responsibility that I was not aware of the Onalaska's mural ordinance. The original vision of the murals on our building were to make a long-time dull facade into many works that would add color to also promote our business and Onalaska. The signage on our building that were placed prior to my tenure have not been effective in catching the attention of potential customers. Since the near completion of our works on our building, we have had nothing but positive feedback from our customers and people of the community. We have had calls from non-customers expressing how nice the building looks. If we would have negative feedback, we would have actively changed our images and messaging to accommodate our customers. Coming from the residential construction world for over 2 decades, I've learned a lot about interpretation of code and the importance of safety versus areas that leave the communication between the builder and inspector to come to an agreement about application. I really feel that our building is an example that Holman Lindsay and the city of Onalaska can hopefully come to an agreement. We have spent thousands of dollars on the work that has been almost completed. I'm asking that we have the ability to keep our murals. If they have been deemed as signage, I would love the opportunity to apply for the proper permits and have the same opportunity as the surrounding businesses in the city of Onalaska, according to our zone B2 district. I also ask that if we can work toward an agreement that the timeline on the exception to the mural permit application be paused. We want to keep contributing to the city of Onalaska by not just improving the consumer traffic at our location, which not only ensures us staying at our location, but also improving the community by donating product and time to keep enhancing the city of Onalaska. Thank you. And please ask me any questions if I can be of any help. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Would anyone else like to address the Common Council this evening? Second call for anyone wishing to address the Common Council. Third and final call for anyone wishing to give public input this evening. Public input is now closed and we'll continue on with the report for the mayor, from the mayor. Item A is a proclamation declaring July 13th, 2024 as Clearwater Farm Day in celebration of their 25-year anniversary. I'll be reading that proclamation at their event this Saturday, and I hope that you'll be able to join us there as they celebrate 25 years in part of our community.
Mayor, is there a time on that?
It is a time. Do you know the time, Diane?
Yes, I believe it is. I can look it up.
9
I
to
think-
3 or
I
something.
have it on my
like that.
calendar.
I'm reading the proclamation at 12. So if you want to come at noon, you can see the proclamation, but there's going to be food trucks and other fun events there as well.
Starts at 9 a.m., goes till 2. I believe the band plays from 11 to 1, and that's why they thought the mayoral proclamation would be most appropriate at 12:30.
There you go. All the details. Hope to see you there. We'll be there. Okay, recommendation for approval and or possible action from the following committees, commissions, boards, and officials. All items listed under the consent agenda are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless a council member requests removal, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered in the order of business in the non-consent agenda. Are there any items the councilors would like removed from the consent agenda? Okay, not seeing or hearing any, I'll entertain a motion regarding the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
A motion on the floor by Diane Wolf. It's been seconded by Larry Jurassic to approve the consent agenda. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, please say no. The consent agenda passes unanimously. That brings us to item 7, a recap of the items pulled from the consent agenda. There were none. So we'll move on to item 8, the Finance Committee, and I will turn it over to the Finance Committee Chair, Sean McAllister.
Thank you, Mayor. Under vouchers, the list of monies expended since the last common council meeting is $2,410,493.30. I'll make a motion to approve that total.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Sean McAllister to approve the vouchers. It's been seconded by Larry Jurassic. Is there any discussion on this item? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Back to Sean.
And then item B, Sabrina, are you leading that one? Thank you.
Thank you. So in your packets tonight, starting on page 7, is the unassigned general fund balance policy. This was brought forward to our Finance and Personnel Committee last week. Essentially what happened is towards the end of 2023, early 2024, there were questions around our fund balance, and there was recommendation that there be a discussion on our policy. So that's what's sitting before you today, that the city would maintain an anticipated unassigned general fund balance between 25 and 40% of annual general fund revenues when we're working through the budget process, that we should budget that we would stay between 25 and 40%. We have been above this for a long period of time. So we have by far exceeded this 25 to 40%. Rick and I had discussions. I talked to other finance directors across the state, as well as our auditors. Our auditors say we are in a wonderful position, as well as Moody's when they do our rating every year. Our reserves, we do have a robust reserves for the city of Onalaska. If there is intent to change this policy, my recommendation would be that it would state anticipated unassigned general fund balance at minimum of 45% of general fund revenues. And my only reasoning for changing that is, it does say between 25 and 40, and we've been above that. And we've been above that since 2014. That's as far as I went back. So that would be my only thoughts in regards to changing the policy, but I also believe it doesn't have to be changed either. So that would be my recommendation. The Finance and Personnel Committee, we had discussion and we did push it so there could be a larger discussion here.
Well, I'll move to change our unassigned general fund balance policy to reflect no less than 45%. Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Stephen Knott. It's been seconded by Alder Milky to change the policy to read greater than 45%.
No less than.
Or no less than 45% of the annual general fund revenues. Is there further discussion? Alder Knott?
So Sabrina, if we were to spend down to 45% over the course of 1 or 2 years, would that affect our Moody's rating with a sudden decrease in our
It absolutely would.
Okay.
That would not be my recommendation. I think having the policy written this way, then we're following the policy. We're above that 45%. Right now, we're at 90.
Okay.
When I look at the 10-year average, it's 89%. So if we were to suddenly drop, that would significantly affect our Moody's rating.
That's what I thought.
Okay, Alder Wolf.
Thank you, Your Honor. But that doesn't mean that, not that I'm advocating for it at this point in time, but that doesn't mean that contrary to drop it within a year or two to the minimum 45%, that one could possibly look at lowering it incrementally. If it is determined and this body determines that there is need, that, and we could still avoid damaging or hurting or risking anything with our Moody's rating, because I think everyone in this room is very protective of our Moody rating for many reasons.
Yeah, so my recommendation would be in the future, if there was a need to use fund balance, that it would be for a capital purpose, because that's easily explainable to Moody's. Yes, we use some fund balance, but it was for Project X. We would never want to use it for operational purposes because that just puts us in a hole
Yep.
for the following year. But that's definitely something we can continue to discuss through the CIP process as we get closer to the end of 2024, as we are working through budgets and so forth.
Okay, well, and thank you for that, because I was one last fall just kind of asking, where was the saturation point? Because when we're going to have this discussion, and I appreciate that we're having this, and I appreciate the 45%, no less than 45%. So I will be supporting that this evening. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go back to our finance director, Sabrina Steger.
The only other thing that I would note is, our reserves in 2023, I did come forward with interim administrator at that time, Amanda Jackson, and we worked on changing our investment policy and got us into a position where we are able to have some interest income that comes in that got us to that nice surplus that we had in 2023. But if we start spending reserves, that takes away from that interest income as well. So just things to keep in mind. If we spend, get it down to 45%, that means that's less revenue that we can budget for the general fund as well. So just kind of heads up on that.
Thank you. Okay, Alder Jurassic.
Thank you, Chair. Question I have is you're throwing out percentages. Can you throw us out some dollars as far as what range are you talking about? see.
In regards to, I guess I don't
Reserve.
fully understand your question, like what our current reserves are at.
Right.
We're over 9 million
Okay.
for unassigned reserves.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Alder Stevens, do you have any comments or questions?
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor. First, after thinking about this, I think it's a good idea to get rid of that top number because, I mean, technically, if we go back, according to Sabrina, to 2014, it almost sounds like we should have spent down some of those cash reserves and, spending money that we don't need to just to conform to a policy. That sounds like not good policy. The I'm fine with 45%. It seems a little, like why is 45 good, 50 is too much, and 40 is not enough? I don't know, but I guess it's fine to just establish a baseline, and as long as we're twice that amount, hopefully there shouldn't be any uh I don't think it's going to be relevant probably for a long time unless council changes its fiscal policy. So I have no problem supporting this.
Thank you. Alder Milky.
I have nothing.
Thank you. Alder McAllister? No. Alder Wolf? Alder Not?
Well, I'm wondering if maybe 45% isn't a proper low cap. Maybe it should be a higher figure. If we were to go to 45% and it were to affect our AA bond rating, that would be very, very bad. So perhaps this is still too lenient of a policy. Sabrina, what do you think?
Well, I said 50, Rick said 40, so we met in the middle at 45. But again, across the state, when I talked to other finance directors, they were all between that 40 and 50%. I think there was one at 55. So I mean, I feel comfortable in that range.
Okay, because the danger I see here is, every year we have changeover and there is politicians are sometimes encouraged, if they see a pot of money that they're allowed to spend it. Now, I'm opposed to doing that for multiple reasons, not just the Moody's. I mean, this is emergencies happen. We need to be ready for them too. But I just know that can happen, and it's just all based on personalities. I mean,
You wouldn't
I've-
upset me to make it a higher number.
all right. And you said that statewide is mostly between 40 and 50?
Yeah, I mean, there was one at 55 that I talked to. Granted, this is a small group through the league. I think there's 20 of us, and I just asked the question in a Zoom meeting and people were throwing numbers at me. And the highest one I saw was 55.
Well, then why don't we join the most fiscally conservative municipality? And I'll be willing to make an amendment to my motion saying that I move to make it no less than 55%.
Okay, except we just went to class on how to make motions. And when there's a motion on the floor, we need to act on it.
Yeah.
So we would have to vote down this and then go ahead, Sabrina.
The only thing I wanted to add in case there was an amendment to a motion, on page 8 is kind of the second paragraph of the policy. It says, should the assigned general fund balance fall below 30% of general fund revenues, a plan regarding compliance with the policy shall be submitted to the city council via the finance committee. Just wondering if there is any intent of changing that percentage as well. If you'd like to increase that, I would think if you're going to the at minimum, that maybe those percentages would be the same, but
Okay, Alder
Makes
Wolf.
sense.
Thank you, Your Honor. So I was thinking that also, and thank you, Sabrina, for that. I hear what Alder Knott is referencing. For me, that's for me personally, I think what I'm most concerned about is we don't have any language in 4.A unassigned general fund balance policy in either of the two paragraphs that talks about limiting how much we spend down if we were to in any given year. But then, of course, that could be a whole bunch of possibilities, like, if there was war, if there was a catastrophe, in the city of Onalaska or La Crosse County or whatever, then, but for me personally, I'm more concerned about, I have a couple things. One is the possibility, I think it's a very, very remote possibility of ever spending it down too much in like over a couple of years. I think the 40 years of our previous finance director, he encountered, and long-term staff who are still in this room can attest to this, that it seems that no matter who has ever sat on this council and had 7 elected up here, we've always been very conservative with the tax dollars and how we spend and how we budget. And you've had people of all varying partisan politics, and everything in between of of where people, and it just seems like we seem to always come together regardless of who's here. Sure, we may have some arguments and some difference of opinions, but when we come down, we pass a budget every year and it's always very conservative and we're always very respectful of the tax dollar. So I don't see that happening. That's not to say that it can happen. So because half this, because half the council has the chance, has the ability to turn over every single year. And that's kind of scary, you know? So yeah, I could certainly go along with Alder if he were to make if we were to vote and the first vote fails, I would certainly be in support of maybe upping that number, but also maybe changing number 2 also. Because it just seems like if we're going to raise the first number, why aren't we maybe making that adjustment on that second paragraph? So-
Okay, let's have Amanda Jackson weigh in here.
Just a point of order, you can have an amendment to the original motion. The amendment would be, it should not interrupt another speaker. It should be seconded. There should be discussion on the amendment. And then once the amendment, if it passes, goes back to the original motion as amended, there should be another chance for discussion on the original motion as
So
amended.
we just couldn't withdraw it. Maybe that's what it was.
That-
We couldn't
we could not
withdraw it.
withdraw
That's what,
Withdraw it, but you
No.
can make amendments.
no,
The gal from
can't
Sydney-
withdraw it because
Not
once it's
withdraw.
been made and seconded,
You
it
can't make
belongs to the.
We all went to school, so we're, yeah.
Yeah.
We have to check our
But, you know,
notes.
I know you can make multiple amendments, and she went through all the.
Okay, yeah, you're right. You're right.
No,
You're
but
right.
that was-
It was the withdrawal that you couldn't do. Thank you, Amanda, for being our parliamentarian.
Well, then,
We just want to do the right thing, that's all.
I move to amend my original motion to have the lower limit for the unassigned general fund balance to be set at 55% of annual general fund revenues. And to also amend paragraph 4.8 to say that should the unassigned general fund balance fall below 55% of general fund revenues, plan yada, exactly what it says after that, plan for regaining compliance, ...
Okay, so it was 55% for both
Both.
things.
I will second that amendment.
Okay, so that motion has been made by Stephen Nod. It's been seconded by Diane Wolf. Is there a discussion on the amendment?
Yeah, Your Honor.
Yes, we'll go. Dan Stevens, go ahead.
Sure. And if there's a better way for you, that you want me to signal,
Nope,
So
that's
I-
okay.
at 55%, again, I guess it doesn't matter to me if it's 45, 50 or 55, but if the only reason that we're putting it at 55 is so that we can say that we are, somebody else is doing it and we want to be equally the most conservative in the policy, it just kind of seems like a silly reason. What happens if they later raise theirs to 60%? Then we also have to do that? Or why is the number the number? If the council is at 55%, that's what they want to do. I'm fine with that. I just don't think that we should be chasing other municipalities just so we can say that we're number one or whatever the case. So I guess on that, I'm not against 55%. I'm really asking what's the underlying reason of why we are pursuing that number rather than the one that was brought forth on the agenda.
Thank you, Alder Stevens. Alder Jurassic?
Thank you, Mayor. Going back to the 9 million, is that what's in there currently, or is that what it would be at the 45 level?
That's what's currently, but as we grow our expenses and our revenues, we would want to increase our fund balance to kind of help absorb some of those costs if that's kind of how the percentages work. So as we continue to grow, the fund balance should grow with us, which is why I added to fund balance in 2023 was
But you're
because
saying right now
our,
we're about 90%,
correct.
so, okay. All right.
Okay, let's see. Alder Not.
Yeah, I don't know that it's so much random. I think we're trying to create the conditions to where we retain our fiscal health to include maintaining our Moody's rating and trying to establish a policy that would get us there, I guess, to do that, and would make it difficult. Again, any of these things can be overturned by a future council. They just have to change the policy, but it would be more difficult to do so. As opposed to, well, gee, it's 45%, let's just spend it. And that's my big concern. I don't think this council would do that. But in 10 years, 15 years, probably none of us will be here. Who knows what's going to happen then? Personalities do change. It's politicians are personality dependent. And you could have folks that, well, it's there, let's spend the pot of money. And I think we're trying to create the conditions to where that becomes more difficult to do. We want to retain our fiscal responsibility here as a city.
Okay, any other discussion on the amendment? Anybody? Okay, so we'll vote first on the amendment, which is to set a limit for the unassigned general fund balance to be no less than 55%. And and then following in the section 4.8, if the fund balance were to fall below that 55%, we would need to have a plan in place. Is that correct, Stephen?
Correct.
Okay, so we'll vote on the amendment now.
I'll ask for a roll call, please.
Okay, we'll have a roll call, which will make it much easier. Thank
For
you for that.
Amendment and the amended motion.
Right now, we're
Oh.
voting on the amendment.
Yes.
Okay, when your name is called, please answer yes if you're in agreement for the 55% in both of those sections.
Larry Jurassic,
Yes.
Stephen Knott,
Yes.
Dan Stevens,
I'm gonna say no.
Mike Milky,
Yes.
Sean McAllister,
Yes.
Diane Wolf.
Aye.
Okay, so the amendment passes with a vote of 5-1. And now we will go back to the original motion as amended, which virtually ends up being what the amendment was. So that should be simple. Do you need me to restate it or are you good?
Good.
Everyone's good? Okay, Joanne, please answer when your name is called.
Dan Stevens,
Aye.
Diane Wolf,
Aye.
Mike Milky,
Aye.
Larry Jurassic,
Aye.
Stephen Knott,
Yes.
Sean McAllister.
Yes.
Okay, so the final vote is 6-0 and the motion passes unanimously. Okay. Sabrina, that's everything you needed for your policy update?
Thank
Thank you
you.
for that.
She's smiling.
She liked it a lot. Okay, number 9 is the Board of Public Works and Utilities. We'll turn it over to the chair of that committee, Stephen Knott.
Wondering, Mayor, if we could bump this one and let the Plan Commission move forward since we have some citizens waiting, and this one probably will also have lengthy discussion.
Sure. We'll move on then to item 10, the Plan Commission. This is an appeal of the special exception application to deviate from section 707-13B2 of the Code of Ordinances to allow murals on a primary facade of the structure located at 820 Second Avenue South. This is tax parcel ID number 18-951-5. The applicant is Hallman Lindsay Paints. And for the counselor's information, the item that passed on the Plan Commission meeting, the agenda item was a special exception to the mural ordinances regarding locating murals on a primary facade of the structure located at the same address I just stated, and there were 7 conditions to this. We'll ask for City Attorney Amanda Jackson to introduce this item tonight, please.
Yeah, so if you look in your packet, you have the information provided from the Plan Commission, as well as photos of all of the murals. So in the staff report that was submitted to the Plan Commission, the mural review team did meet and made a recommendation to approve the special exemption request for murals number 1 and 6, with a couple changes to mural 1, and then that they would require the removal of the other murals numbers 2 through 5 for failure to meet the standard related to prohibited content, in that it was the mural review team's opinion that they contained commercial messaging. So those murals start on page 17 of the packet and go through page 19 and include the murals that say, "We deliver great people, brighten up your day with Hallman Lindsay Paint, made in Wisconsin, lacrosse to Sun Prairie." And so before you today is the denial of the special exception in part. So pursuant to the city's ordinance, you can appeal from the final decision of the Plan Commission to the Common Council the denial of a special exception to the mural regulations. So that is what is before you tonight. So the question in front of the council is whether or not those murals number 2 through 5 contain prohibited content or not. And so your review is limited to that question. If you have any additional questions, I would be happy to answer them, but I think this is relatively straightforward.
Okay, so with that said, we'll turn this matter over to the council this evening regarding action on the appeal. So either we need a motion to accept or deny the appeal, or people could ask questions, depending upon your choice.
Well, it pains me to do so, but I'll make a motion to deny the appeal.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Stephen Knott. It's been seconded by Diane Wolf to deny the appeal of the special exception application. Is there further discussion? Alder Wolf?
Thank you, Your Honor. So, City Attorney Jackson, could you explain to this body, this voting body this evening, that if we vote with the denial for the appeal of the special exception, what will they be left with? Choices or, because I know there's,
If we deny the appeal,
yes, if we deny the appeal, what will they have to do?
Yep, so if you deny the appeal, they will have to remove murals 2 through 5. They will be allowed to keep mural 1 and 6. There were some changes. I'm just trying to get to the conditions from the
That
plan.
condition 3 that's been referenced about they have to remove on the back of the shirt and.
Yes, yep. So those conditions, I apologize, are outlined in page 24 of your packet. So they already paid the mural special exception. Mural 1 and 6 have been approved, so they would have 30 days. At this point, I think the city would allow 30 days from tonight's decision to remove the references to Hallman Lindsay on the paint shirts, to remove the reference to Sun Prairie and Associated Road, and removal of Made in Wisconsin. And then they would need to remove those additional murals that are identified as number 2 through 5 within 30 days, we'll say, of tonight's decision. And so going back through, they would be allowed to keep the mural in front of you with the fishermen and the sunfish. It would be.
That's on the facade right now.
It is. And so the special exception did allow them to have a mural on the facade. What it did not allow them would be to have a mural with prohibited mural content.
Correct.
And so that's the We Deliver, the You Brighten Up the Day with Hallman Lindsay paint, the Great People. They have to remove the Made in Wisconsin Sun Prairie, and then the Hallman Lindsay on the back of the painter's shirt. So the painters would stay, the dog would stay. They could keep the Made in Wisconsin. They could keep the state. The Made in Wisconsin part would need to go away, as well as a reference to Sun Prairie. The Great Paint would need to go away. The Brighten Up Your Day. So that commercial content would need to go away.
And do one of the murals then turn into a sign? So then they would have a second sign?
I'm going to defer that one
That
to Katie.
qualify? Because I thought that was one of the, right? I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. And so when we're done, whichever way we go, that we all understood exactly what we're approving or disapproving, just so we're fair here.
So if you look at number 4, it would be applicant to obtain a sign permit for one of the murals number 2 through 5. So they could keep one of those 4. They would have to remove 3 of the 4. It would be up to the property owner to decide what mural they would want to stay.
Okay.
As they are allowed 2 wall facade signs, and you may have a facade sign be painted on your structure.
Because of the because of the definition of, with our codes of ordinances and such, they are allowed 2 signs on their particular structure,
They're
correct?
allowed 2 facade signs. They are allowed a variety of other types of signage if they so chose.
Okay,
But 2 facade signs, and the mural or the painted sign would be considered a facade sign, and they already have one existing today.
okay. Thank you so much. And thank you both. Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, Alder Knott?
So I guess I have slight difference of interpretation with the attorney. It's not so much that they have to remove the murals as they have to remove the prohibited content of
Correct,
murals.
correct.
So there, and the way I would interpret that would give them some flexibility on all of the murals as long as the prohibited content is gone, except for getting that second facade approval sign and what have you. I think I am not telling you how to do your signs. I'm not an artist, but as an example of that, you could have like the state of Wisconsin, Wisconsin proud. I mean, that wouldn't be in violation. So they could just, now I know it's not easy to change because it's painted on. I get that, but it would give them some flexibility as long as it's just the prohibited content that needs to go. It's not the entire mural.
Correct. And the Plan Commission did discuss that. So for instance, just looking at the photo above, if they wanted to expand that mural, beyond that, where the words are to something else, if they wanted to change the "we deliver" to more sky and fish, that would be allowed.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And you'd said something about the great people needs to go away? Why would great people have to go away? I'm trying to see how that directly correlates to a paint shop.
Because customer service, great people working there, it could be read as commercial content.
Well, I was connecting it to the state of Wisconsin.
Great.
Well, we're great.
We
Yeah.
are.
So I don't know.
True.
So. Yeah, and I really want to work, have the city work with the vendor here. I mean, they really put a lot of work into this. It's really a shame how this is all unfolding. And I'm wondering if, the 30 days, if we might make an exception of that to where they have a chance to work with them and try to figure out how can we fix this to where we can be most pleased, I guess, with what's remaining. I don't know. I mean, is that,
Well,
I'd be interested in hearing everybody else's opinion on that.
I think everyone likes the mural. It's just
Yeah.
that a mural isn't supposed to be an advertisement.
know
A
that.
sign
That
is
I
an
understand. I
advertisement. So
support.
there's where we're trying to draw a line. Okay,
Yeah.
counselors, Alder Jurassic.
Thank you, Mayor. The question I have is the one on Wisconsin. If they just take out, Prairie, what was it
Made.
On
in-
Prairie,
Sun Prairie? They
could
just
leave
take that
lacrosse
out?
there.
They've been given direction on that. I think they have been made clear what needs to be removed
Yeah.
from
Okay.
the signs.
I mean, I do think a solution has been explored.
Oh, it has.
Alder Stevens? Did you want to say something?
Yeah, no, I've got a few things to say, I guess. So I would just, first, I would remind that this mural policy is fairly new, so a business that had Mr. Fletcher started this a couple years ago, this really wouldn't be any discussion. And so the request has been made for an exception. We as a council can choose to say, hey, made, Road to Sun Prairie or Made in Wisconsin. Could you make the case that that's commercial? Sure, but I mean, he's not saying 5 gallons of paint, 6th one free sort of thing. I mean, it's not grossly commercial and great people. That's it. I gotta ask, whom are we protecting and from whom? And ever since the mural ordinance came out, I think it was well intended, but it's caused an inordinate amount of problems. I mean, it has ruined friendships. It has changed the council. It has upset local service organizations, and now it's putting an undue burden on some businesses. A local Onalaska business has spent thousands of dollars just trying to promote their business and do business in Onalaska, and we're making it difficult for them. And why? I know that we have to have some codes and rules that we adhere to, but we as a council have the right to say, you know what, this is okay. And, I was thinking about the process. If you were a new business and you wanted to do something like this, would you initially think that the first thing I need to do is I gotta go find out what the city's mural policy is? Not every city has one, and like for the over 150 years that Onalaska existed, we got by just fine without telling our businesses, what they could paint or not paint on their buildings. So I really think that like Steven said, I'd like to find a way to work with Holman Lindsay to find an acceptable solution. I think, 30 days or it has to come down, or paint over, or like, I really don't want to destroy anything that they did. It sounds like it's been a hit with the customers. It's not in a residential neighborhood. It's off a highway and on a side street off of that. So you don't see it if you're looking, unless you're looking at it. So what is the purpose? Why are we enforcing this? How does that promote the public good? And I think it's causing more harm than good. And so I am really advocating for as much leniency as we can, and then revisiting the code at a later date.
Thank you for that. Alder Stevens, Amanda Jackson.
I just want to offer city staff standpoint a little bit. We've had a lot of discussions regarding this and, Alder Stevens alluded to what if this had been done before the mural policy. Prior to the mural policy, and for a very long time, the city has had a very definitive sign code, and these would have been viewed as signs, and they would not have been allowed as signs. And so this concern that city staff has is that we're really at this point blending a mural into a sign, and they need to remain distinct. I think staff in general is very pro mural, but we have always had a very tight sign code that we have enforced very uniformly. New projects come in are reviewed. I mean, all of you have reviewed many a PUD that has requested, exceptions to the sign code. We, allow so many facade signs. And so if we start to allow murals as signs, we've essentially eradicated our sign code. And so it's not so easy to say, oh, this is just a mural that has some commercial content. By doing that, then we've essentially unwound our sign code that we have held many, many other businesses across the city to.
So just to kind of recap that, if we did not have the mural ordinance, none of this would be allowed.
Correct, with the exception of they could have an additional wall facade sign, just one on the front of their building.
So the point about like checking the code, it's the same as if it was a sign. Okay, we'll go around one more time then. Alder Knott?
So as far as making a broad exception, there's great challenges to that. If we grant exceptions to any policy, if they are not defined and limited, then we are exposing ourselves to pretty much anything goes in the future. I mean, we all seem to like this sign. We think it's great, but what if well, geez, if they can do it now, so can I, and it's a sign we don't like. Well, there's not much we can do. All right. So I have no problem with sticking with our regulations within the city, the ordinances, but again, to me, I'm open to giving them a little more time to come within compliance so they can come up with a good solution. I understand you're saying that there was a lot of discussion on how to resolve this. Okay. But 30 days is a very short time to basically have an artist redo everything or part of it. It won't be everything. But yeah. So I'm willing to give them a little bit more time, but I'm not willing to ignore the ordinance, I guess, is where I'm going.
Thank you. Alder Wolf?
Thank you, Your Honor. I agree with Alder Knott. I understand that right now it's 30 days. I would certainly support if you were to if Alder Knott were to want to give maybe amended to 60 days or something. But the way I understand it, the way it stands right now, we're looking to deny it, but just giving them more time to try. And I think that's very fair because I mean, we know how it's been raining. It's like, right now we're in a good spot, but who knows what it's going to do, the next 30 days. And the good thing I will say, and I'm not going to put, I don't mean to put any words into our planning director's mouth, and legal, but the city of Onalaska, my personal opinion is we historically have been very, unless it's like a court decision, we've been very good working with constituents when there might be an order to meet a certain deadline. And if there's weather conditions or whatever, to grant an extension, just to automatically grant an extension, because you have to work with people, because we're all neighbors, we're all friends, we have to work with one another. And I don't think we've ever really been a penal, this is the date, it's got to be done. Yeah, they're probably going to go and check to make sure that it's done. If it's not, you're going to explain why. You're going to call and say, hey, it's been raining for 3 weeks. We can't do it. More than likely, they're going to go ahead and you're not going to come back to council. That's what usually happens, right? So I don't consider us to be a penal body, neither is our staff. But I will go on record saying that I support the mural policy. This council, sans Alder Milky, voted for this in the last year or so. And I think about my time on council, and and I will always personally and professionally support when we have a handful of instances in our ordinances where this council is the last body for like an appeal. We just have a few instances where people can come to us. And I think that's a good thing. And we've had a handful of appeals through the years for a whole different myriad of topics. And I honestly don't remember a single time that council has ever bent and said, we're not going to follow. I mean, there might have been one stray one that I just can't remember, and we've always listened. We've always been thoughtful. We've always listened. But at the end of the day, to me, it's about supporting our current policy. It's about supporting staff who is carrying out that policy. And I know there was a issue some years ago, and I remember council was a unanimous 6-0 vote to deny a particular request. And I had staff calling me personally the next day, thanking me for supporting them because they felt that they would have been damaged. Like they would have lost some of their credibility if council just starts taking away and just, and denying stuff. So, but at the end of the day, I'm going to support the mural policy, and but I will certainly be in support of extending it 60 days if Aldernaut or anyone would like to amend that. Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay. Alder McAllister, do you have any comments? Okay, Alder Milky?
Yeah, so I guess when I look at this, one word that comes to mind is interpretation. So how are we interpreting what is a sign? I mean, I can see what we have in here says, great paint product for sale. Great people is a slogan, great people is customer service. But if we look at it in a different way, maybe we can interpret this differently. So great paint, maybe it's a statement, not a sign. Great people, it's a statement talking about Wisconsin, talking about the people in our area. We deliver, like we give people what they want. I guess I just have the interpretation of it, that is a sign is something that I'm just wondering about.
Is that a question?
No, it's
comment?
just a statement. It's something that I've been thinking about since we had this on the 25th, the meeting where it came down. And it's just been something I've been thinking about is, I guess I can ask the difference. What
Okay.
is the difference between a
Yeah,
sign
so-
and a statement?
Amanda, do you want to take that, or Katie? The difference between a sign and a mural?
Well, it's not specifically a mural, it's a statement, right? Like what they're out, I guess technically it's part of a mural.
I mean, if a reasonable person can interpret it as a commercial content, then I think it is a sign. I mean, the specific, what the ordinance calls out is that where the intended audience is commercial or actual potential consumers, and where the content of the mural is commercial in character, therefore becoming a sign. And so you're always going to have multiple people, but when you have a commercial business that serves general public customers and you talk about great people, I don't think it's unreasonable to assume that that is commercial in focus. Mr. Fletcher, even in his appeal, indicated that the purpose of this is to increase customer awareness, to advertise, and essentially to sell more products. And so they've acknowledged that the purpose of this, is to increase their sales and to increase their customer focus. And so I think at that point, that supports the fact that this is more sign than not.
Okay, thank you for that. Alder Stevens, did you have any final comments?
Yeah, so I guess twofold. Perhaps I have a little bit differing view. On what I see the role of the Common Council. I view the Common Council's role as to make policy, and from time to time, when it becomes prudent, to amend or change the policy. Our job is not to enforce the policy. We have the ability to make exceptions. What I do see our job is to support the general interest and welfare of Onalaska's residents and also its businesses. I think we're failing to do that here with the way that the discussion is going, and I think that should be taken into account. Mr. Fletcher did say that he was here to take any questions. I'm curious if he could speak as to what a denial of the exception policy would mean to his business and how Hallman Lindsay might, if it is denied, kind of like how they would plan to make the best of it. Like, we're making a decision on a business. Could we actually hear from the business operator to see how that would affect them directly? Assuming he's willing to.
Would the council like to hear more input from Ben Fletcher? He did give public input.
That's the question I was gonna ask too.
Okay, Ben, could you approach, please?
Yeah.
Did anybody have a direct?
Welcome
question or
again.
just-
I think that part of it is just, looking at what passed at the Plan Commission. How would you, I think it would be helpful for the counselor to know, like, how would you enact that? Or what your strategy is for complying? Or if this appeal doesn't pass and we're back to what we passed on at Plan Commission,
I guess
how will you make that happen?
I think my full intention is to, if we deem them as signs, to try and get sign permits to keep what we have. Like I said, because we have spent thousands of dollars on this. And again, I admit, that's my fault, not as far as the sign, but like I said in my opening statement, my intention was it as a mural. My intent being, when I put paint on a wall, when we do things like that back in the day of what I used to do, paint with messaging, it still was just a mural because it's paint, it's easily removable, easily manipulated. So my intention would be obviously try to keep what I can on the building. I just still have confusion as far as the zoning district and what is allowed based on what I had on the sheet that I didn't bring up. I'm sorry, on a B2 district. I don't know why we only get 2 facade signs. I'm just not sure on that. And that's why I love to work with the city on that to figure that out on what we can do to keep what we have. Because the intention, like I said, was to have each mural be independent, to be colorful, not to blend together and just get lost in the landscape like that building has for decades, for a very long time. Our paintbrush sign that is detached from the structure out in the parking lot. Nobody's seen it since 2016 when it was implemented. That sign is actually leaving. It's going to Eagle River, Wisconsin, because we made that determination that we are having so much success with the mural that's on the building that we don't need that sign anymore. One of our other locations can have it. So yeah, if we have to take the words and the imaging down, it drastically is going to change what it is. And honestly, we would just probably paint over it eventually, because the true intention, honestly, and not even talking with the planning commission, we forthright put the sunfish on the front of the building. Which show, I mean, I graduated from here, I grew up here. And I know what that means to Onalaska. It's right up the street, right across from the Blue Moon. So we did that voluntarily for a reason. Because we didn't want to have all commercial imaging on the front of the building. So that's what we would be looking for, would be to keep what we have in some way. So.
Okay, do you have any other questions for Mr. Fletcher?
Yeah.
Stephen Knott?
The more I'm thinking about this, I think there's bigger questions. Some of which would have to be in a closed session for, it would fit one of the reasons why. I almost think now that I'm leaning towards we need to table this for 1 month and do some more research.
Okay, are there any more questions for Mr. Fletcher? Larry Jurassic?
Yes, this has been on the docket for a while. What interaction have you had with the city?
The only interaction is when we were almost completed and Katie showed up to our job and we were forced to shut down. And then any correspondence that you would have probably before you or Katie had sent to me about the information on I think when you sent me the ordinances, maybe. But then the only other interaction that I had was when I sent in the permit and I got the exception to the mural law. And then I finally started reading about what the exceptions were and why I really came to the meeting last time, because I guess I really didn't grasp that I was going to lose everything off the building. So that's why when it kind of dawned on me that I make it to the meeting, then I had the opportunity to appeal. That's why I did that. But the only interactions that I've truly had were my correspondence through email with the planning commission or the deputy clerk. That's all I've had.
So in your mind, do you believe that the city has given you the information that you need to make any adjustments, or are you still up in the air about it?
I'm up in the air because it wouldn't be here if I had answers.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Could I ask, how did this come up? Were there any public complaints or was this just generated from the city?
It was generated from the city. Because there was not a mural permit.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Fletcher?
And could you repeat that?
It was generated from the city because there was not a mural permit. So we reached out to them related to a mural permit.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fletcher. We'll
Yep.
call you up if we need any more questions. Okay, so I think I feel like some people aren't following that what passed at Plan Commission included the 7 conditions, which are the things that would have to be changed about the current mural to make it compliant with the mural policy. If we did not have the mural policy, they would have to comply with the sign policy, which is much more strict. And so there's a bunch of, it's complex, like there's a bunch of different things going on here and that I think people are kind of not sure where they want to land with them all.
I'm wondering if there would be interest in an amendment. Like I understand. So the crux of it is the commercial nature, which would be signage versus a mural, which is intended to be more art. So for example, like the removal of references to Hallman Lindsay on the paint shirts, I guess I can see that. But I think we as council could make an exception for, like the removal of made in Wisconsin. I mean, is that really something we want to protect Onalaska consumers from? And then I fail to see how the reference of a road to Sun Prairie is, maybe commercial adjacent at best. So maybe there's a way that we can make this a little easier or find a way to compromise that makes the onus that we're putting on a non-Alaska business a little bit less so. I think we should find ways to work with our business partners. And so if this gets, my understanding, if this gets denied, then Made in Wisconsin has to go. A picture of Sun Prairie as the location of, where this comes from has to go. I don't think those help anybody, and I don't think it's hurting anybody. And I don't think that really gives an unfair competitive advantage in the Unalaska paint market. But if there's not other appetite for that, I won't make an amendment, but I'm thinking maybe we can find a way to make this easier and resolve this tonight.
Okay, let's see. Did everyone, you think you're all even on turns to speak? We'll start another round. Okay, Stephen Knott.
I'm tending more to agree with what Dan is saying now too. I mean, brighten up your day with Holman Lindsay Paint. That's to me clearly a sign. The great paint is probably, but the rest, I just don't know if it is, in which case, they just needed one sign permit for that, I guess, because they're right next to each other in the same facade, right? I don't know. Yeah, it really is coming down to interpretation. I don't know. I mean, I have other concerns though, too. Like I say, that we would have to have had an agenda for a closed session that I just thought of while I was sitting here. So as a minimum, again, I before we make a decision, I would strongly suggest we consider tabling this for 1 month, because I think there's more research that needs to be done.
Are you done talking? Or are you
Yes.
still thinking? Okay, I wasn't sure because you were just like, I was, wait,
Well,
ready.
Well, I wish I could tell you why, but I
Okay.
can't. It would have to be.
Alder Wolf.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm going to ask that this does not count as my turn. I just want to just note for the record that if there is a motion to table in a second, there's no discussion on a tabling. So just be aware, if you make a motion in a table, there's no discussion. Thank you.
I have not made.
Well, and if we were to table it, what is the purpose of that? Like, what do we need to accomplish during
I
that
would
time?
have
I
to
guess
get
would
with
be
staff.
my,
Again, it's things that would involve a closed session.
to allow counselors to talk to staff that, okay. All right, any other discussion? The motion on the floor right now is to deny the appeal. So the action at Plan Commission would stand.
I'll move to table this until next month.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Stephen Knott to table. It's been seconded by Alder Dan Stevens. Let's have
Roll call.
voting by roll call, please.
Stephen Knott,
Yes.
Mike Milky,
Yes.
Larry Jurassic,
Yes.
Diane Wolf,
Yes.
Dan Stevens,
Aye.
Sean McAllister.
Yes.
Okay, the voting was unanimous and the item has been tabled until the next common council meeting. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Fletcher, for coming in. We appreciate your input this evening. Okay, back to number 9, Public Works, Alder Knott.
Okay, so at the Public Works and Utilities, Public Works Department presented some options, one to do as in whole and another one to do in bites, in order to make it a little bit more palatable for the budget. But whichever option we choose, there's a strong possibility that we might need to amend our 2024 budget to do so. For that reason, I said that we really need to put this into the non-consent agenda. I'm going to turn it over to Jared at this time.
Thank you. We had a lot of discussion at the Board of Public Works regarding the cemetery columbarium project. Included in your packet tonight is the materials that were out in the packet for the Board of Public Works. We do have 2 cost estimates for the project scope. We got really 4 things on the agenda tonight. And, really what we're looking for from staff wise is we're looking at what project scope to bring forward for the capital improvements budget. and then discussions on financing, and then the last two, which would be 3 and 4, is if we can get authorization to proceed with an RFP for purchase of the columbarium, as it has a 1-year lead time. And then also for number 4 is we want a motion or directive from the council that we are going to remove Hickory Street and start the vacation process of the right of way. We do not have that formally approved yet. So those were the things I was trying to move forward at the Board of Public Works meeting. And I mean, we can answer questions as needed with the project.
Another big piece of this that we decided we needed to bring it forward, Mayor, was the financing on this. I kind of alluded to it that we might have to amend the budget, but options on whether or not we go with a partial on how that would be paid for, or a full, how that would be paid for, because obviously we have to know how we're going to do this if we're going to approve it, so. I would recommend that maybe Jared give us some details on the 2 phases, the phase 1 and then the all full build phase on, because not everybody was there on how those would work out and how, especially on the phase 1, that would start paying for future phases, if you will.
I can do that. Okay.
Go ahead.
I'm just making sure, we're going in the right direction. In your packet tonight on page 9, there is a cost estimate for a full build out of phase 1. And that cost estimate has a projected estimated cost of about 387,000. In page 10, you have a partial build out of phase 1 for a cost of approximately 240,000. And then in page 11, you can see a depiction of the columbarium area showing phase 1, and the red area that's been highlighted, it would be the partial build out on page 11, and page 12 shows the full build out area. Just as a note, with these, the columbariums themselves are quite expensive. We are estimating for this estimate $85,000 to purchase the columbarium itself. And that is just the 100 niche, 80 niche round columbarium you see on page 11 and 12. Does not include any columbariums around it, and does not include any of the archwork or anything that was in the original proposal. So this, even with this phase 1, we will still have future projects in this area. So basically, the biggest thing that I see with the full build out is we get an actual pedestrian connection up to 13th Avenue. We would put the decorative fence in. We would add more landscaping. We'd add we would add items that would actually show the kind of complete phase 1. But obviously, those during the 2024 proposed capital improvements budget, we did have a budget number, because we did not have the design completed yet at that time, of 250,000. So that's when we wanted to bring it forward to make sure that from a staff standpoint, we did not receive funding, complete the project on a smaller scale, and then have someone come up and say, wow, that wasn't what I was envisioning or what I thought I was approving. So that's kind of where we're at with the cost estimates and the phasing of the build out. So
Old or not?
So to buy the one columbarium at 85,000, that's the one that we basically be committing money to this year. Because they would be getting your estimates now, and you want to get it committed, so because there's a backlog on getting the columbarium built in. But by doing that, it would almost obligate us to at least do the phase 1 partial in the 2025 capital improvements budget, because you'll need the pads down in order to put the columbarium in. That's all correct, right? I mean, 'cause I wanna make sure we're understanding that.
What staff would like to do is, through the RFP process, bring back, hopefully in September, a proposal to purchase a columbarium. It has a 1-year lead time. So with that, we would not actually have to pay until we receive it. So we wouldn't pay for the columbarium until actually in 2025. But we would be issuing a purchase order, which is saying that we are approving a purchase of that amount. With that, we would also be as Alder Knott has stated, the columbarium does us no good if we get it here and has no place to sit. So, if we, you know, we really would have to be, committing to putting in at least the partial build out.
Right.
Now, my cost estimates do include 85,000 for the columbarium purchase. So just that was one point of, a little bit of confusion at the Board of Public Works. So
Yeah, so.
that is a line item in the estimates.
So the two total costs you're looking at, you subtract 85,000 out of that, and that's what we'd basically be obligating ourselves to for the 2025 capital improvements budget. Even though we haven't gone into the budget process yet. I mean, the bottom line is if we're gonna take $85,000 out of 2024 funds to get the columbarium, it's got to have some place to go. Yeah. I don't know, Mayor, if you.
Okay, yeah, let's have Sabrina Steger give us an idea of how we could do that best.
Thank you. So my apologies, I was not at Board of Public Works. But my recommendation would be if we were to go forward with buying the columbarium, that we would use some reserves out of the cemetery fund. So the cemetery fund, they operate as an enterprise fund, similar to the Omni Center. So typically what happens is when someone buys a lot, 80% stays in the fund as revenue, and then 10% goes into a capital improvement, and then the other 10% goes into another reserve balance as well, perpetual care for the cemetery. So that's how we increase those reserves every year, is by that 10%, that 20% going in those two reserve funds. So my recommendation would be, based on, we have around 150,000 sitting in capital improvements for the cemetery fund, that we would use some of those reserves out of the cemetery fund to pay for the columbarium, and then bring forward whatever the recommendation is on the full build out or the partial build out to the CIP budget for 2025.
Okay, back to Stephen.
One more piece of critical information. So purchasing the columbarium up front with cemetery funds, it would be replenished with the sales over time, not immediately, but over time, with the sales of the columbarium spots inside of that. So it would, over time, pay for itself, and we'd have that money back in. But of course, that will take time to sell all those. So.
Okay, Jared, did you want to add?
Yeah, I hopefully as part of we haven't performed an actual business plan yet on this and what we're going to charge for a niche, which is a spot in the columbarium. But my hope would be is that as we sell niches in the columbarium, we designate those funds. So then once the columbarium gets relatively full, we have enough set aside that we can purchase another columbarium to augment it. And it just kind of is
Keeps rolling.
as the years go on, it's a rolling effect. I mean, this is going to be a long-term process, but that would be my goal.
But over time, as all three of them are built out, the last one would replenish from the initial investment, if you will. But we're
Theoretically.
talking a long time from now. Yeah.
So is it a niche or is it a niche?
Say tomato, I say tomato. I don't know.
I don't know.
But we had discussion, it was kind of split in the Public Works board on whether or not the members wanted to go with the partial or the full. I personally am leaning more towards the partial for now. That would give us the flexibility at the capital improvements budget to decide whether or not we can actually afford the full. But if that makes sense. Or maybe it doesn't, that doesn't have to be.
Have you
decided
ever
tonight.
seen that happen at Public Works? Where you go up instead of down?
Well, or maybe we just wait till the capital improvements process to have this discussion of which one can we afford, but we're committing ourselves basically to at least doing the partial if we move forward with the columbarium.
Okay, other counselors, comments, questions? Alder Wolf?
Thank you, Your Honor. So I fully support spending the $85,000 wherever Sabrina says it's okay to take that money. You and Jared could work that out and Rick could work that out. I'm staying out of it. I I said at Board of Public Works last week, and I'll say again, right now, I'm leaning towards like the full build out. But I certainly understand once we get to, once Board of Public Works, you get your list from Jared come September, you start, tearing it apart in October, you finalize it in November. I realize that, we'll have to see where the list comes in. I'm guessing it's going to be 12, $14 million. And then we'll get down to whatever we're going to approve. But I think one main reason why I'm still leaning towards the full build out is because we've been waiting so long. The community has been waiting so long, and not that I'm sure the community's been disappointed before, but sometimes it's what the city does. But I think since we've been waiting so long, I think for not that, I mean, yes, I realize there's a dollar difference between the full and the partial, but in the bigger scheme of things, it isn't that much difference. And I think that we would just have a greater effect for the community. They've waited that long. Let's have a nice rollout. I'm concerned that if we reduce it, I don't want to use the word cheapen it, but I think it will just reduce the excitement. And I think if we wanted to flourish and excel, and I'm not saying let's go over the top, but I think when we look at the dollars, I think it's time. But I will certainly be watching and attending the Board of Public Works this fall and seeing, and I understand that you're going to have a lot of pressures and it's going to come down to wants versus needs. But I, for one, will certainly support one of the two with my vote this fall to support that $85,000 purchase.
Jared, did you want to add something? I felt like you seemed like you wanted to say something. Okay, and let me just ask Alder Stevens if he would like to say something because he's lost in cyberspace. Alder Stevens,
Well.
did you want to say
I'm
anything?
usually lost no matter where I am, but, so I agree with some of, Alder Wolf's points. I would strongly advocate for, committing to the full build out for a couple reasons. One, as Wolf pointed out, this is something that's been on the back burner, and this is kind of an important pet project to a lot of dedicated Onalaskans, and it's been put off for years for very good reasons, but I think it's time to get that done. But my main reason would be in the long run financially, when you break up projects into smaller pieces to make it fit into an annual budget, you end up paying a larger amount than you would in the long run. And we've seen that, and we've done that in the past. What comes to mind is like the chillers in the Omni Center. We got the one when we could have got one that was like a multi-chiller. It would have cost more, but then we would not have had to buy two separate chillers. And the price for two separate chillers was significantly more than if you just bought the combo one. And I get the feeling when you break up, I actually like Jared's input on this. If you break up a project, it's the difference if we do the partial and then we revisit it and the year after or years after to finish the project. Do you think it would be, the total would be the aggregate of, like it's X amount and the partial, and we would only have to pay the difference? Or do we expect that we would likely have to pay more than what the difference is if we kick that football down the road? And then the third point is, if you start using different materials at, in different years, the weather will have an effect, the ability of supply will have an effect. I would think things would look nicer and aesthetically tighter if that section, all the roadways and the paths and the arches, were done at the same time on the same build. So, Jared, going back to my middle point there, could you talk about, like, am I wrong? It would be exactly the amount, the difference between the 239 and the whatever the difference was, or would we likely be paying more than what we are projecting now?
Okay, we'll go back to Jared Holter, our Public Works Director.
You are correct. I mean, there's going to be mobilization costs. There's going to be disturbance of the ground. There's going to be economies of scale. The more you bid out, the more work you bid out, the the better the unit prices are. So that it would not double the cost of the project by any means, but there would be definitely economies of scale and only one time of disturbance for if we completed all of the first phase one.
Okay, so Jared, tonight, which of these do you need as motions? So we can kind of
So what,
direct the,
I guess from staff standpoint, we'd really like to get, whether you'd like for us to move forward with an RFP for the columbarium purchase. Which, project scope to put into the capital improvements budget, that's not committing to that project scope. But we'll put that into the proposed capital improvements budget. And then also to, include that a formal motion that we would be removing Hickory Street and starting the vacation process of that right away.
okay, thank you. Back to you, Aldernaut.
I'm gonna make some motions here shortly. So, and to include, I'm gonna make a motion, haven't yet, to approve the purchase of the columbarium. But I'm gonna put a dollar figure on it so everyone understands. If this motion does pass, we're basically fencing $154,900 minimum out of the capital improvements budget for 2025, and that's for the partial build out remainder.
Let me just interrupt.
4%
because-
or so of the budget, just so we're all educated when we may take this vote, that's all.
But Jared, we need to vote to go out to RFP, not to actually purchase it.
Well, if they commit the money.
Or what do you need it to say?
Either we're gonna bring back some sort of RFP that's going to have then you'll formally approve the purchase. Because we don't have a quote, we don't have anything that you can approve the actual purchase
Okay.
tonight.
So the RFP is all you need now.
Correct.
And so the dollar figure I told you may change by some thousands up or down after the RFP comes by. Okay, I'll move to approve the Public Works to pursue an RFP on the columbarium purchase. And on can I combine them or do they have to be separate motions? Okay, and to vacate the right of way for the removal of Hickory Street.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Stephen Nod. It's been seconded by Larry Jurassic. Is there any discussion?
No.
Alder Jurassic.
Yeah, going back to this discussion on full or partial, I revert back to my real estate days. When you're selling a vacant lot on the open property, it's hard to sell those lots. But if you have the streets in, you have the sewer in, everything like that, lots sell a lot easier. And that's what I'm looking at this. We need to have it full contingency completed. Because now what you're looking at is get money back. And the only way you're going to do that is by selling more of those niches.
I would argue
my
that's
support on it.
2025 budget
Right.
discussion. That's not what we're doing here, so, yeah.
Right, okay, any other discussion? Okay, the motion on the floor is to go out for RFP for the columbarium and to proceed with the vacating the right of way and removal of Hickory Street. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, Jared, what else do you need? Okay. Good job. All right, that brings us to item 11, the city administrator report.
Thank you and good evening. The report was put in front of you and Alder Stevens, I did email it to you if you have access to your email as well, so you can see it as well. Just a couple updates. As you know, there are many RFPs that are out there currently. Community center bids were opened and reviewed by staff. Recommendation will be coming forward in August for consideration and approval. Responses to the assessor RFP have been reviewed and interviews will be conducted. A recommendation will be coming forward presumably in August as well. The fire department staffing and facility study responses, they just were currently received and are currently under review, and we'll be proceeding on those as well. And then there are a number of RFPs that are still outstanding. That is the Omni Center expansion concept, the ERP system, banking services, and the rescue truck. So just wanted to give you an update on the various ones. It's been a busy year for RFPs for staff, and so just want to give you an update on those. As you know, the strategic planning joint meeting where all the groups who participated in the process will be meeting. That'll be on July 30th at 10:30. That will be an interactive meeting. Heather and Charlotte will be here and will be leading that meeting. But there will be a conversation between all the groups to talk about the plan and moving forward. I think you've also all heard about the comprehensive plan open house, which is scheduled for July 23rd from 4 to 6 here at City Hall. So if you're able to make it there, the public will have an opportunity to provide input on the proposed final plan. And then the Plan Commission will then have a presentation right after at 6 o'clock at their meeting here in City Hall as well. So just heads up on that. The Omni Center is going to be hosting the next OBA After 5 event. That's also on July 23rd from 5 to 7 p.m. I just want to let you know in case you hadn't heard about that as of yet. And the Staff Success Day, we've started making plans for that. With the potential construction starting of the community center, we're just looking at working out the details of where exactly that's going to be held, but staff are busy getting together presenters and other events and activities for the all-staff day. That's going to be on November 11th. That is Veterans Day. That had been pre-established as the date. Then I just wanted to touch on, I had a chance to attend the WCMA conference, summer conference recently. It was held in Eau Claire. WCMA is a Wisconsin City County Management Association. I recently became a member of that organization. And I just thought one of the speakers there, they had a bunch of great ones, but one of the speakers there was from Ellers and just had some interesting tidbits. And I just put them in there, which I thought were just interesting. That Wisconsin has the highest rate of young people engaged in the workforce, and young people is determined as ages 16 to 24. I thought that was interesting for the nation, and that the state ranks 8th for mid-range workforce. That's ages 25 to 54. So again, I just thought that those were interesting statistics for the state of Wisconsin. And the state has 90,000 jobs that we do not have enough employees to fill. So again, just some interesting little tidbits that they provided there. The WCMA puts on a summer and fall conference every year, and they move it around the state. At this conference, they did indicate that they're looking for new sites to hold the conference. And so I just very recently started some local conversations about possibly submitting a proposal to bring the conference here to Onalaska. So more to come on that later. And then just the meetings and events. That's everything I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Rick. Okay, item 12, closed session. To consider a motion to convene in closed session under section 1985G of the Wisconsin statutes for the purpose of conferring with legal counsel for the governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to become involved. 2024 CB 299 Mayo Clinic Health System, Southwest Wisconsin region versus the city of Onalaska. If any action is required in open session as a result of the closed session, the council will reconvene in open session to take necessary action and or continue on with the printed agenda. Do we have a motion?
Move to go into closed session.
Second.
Motion has been made by Stephen Knott. It's been seconded by Mike Milky. The voting will be by roll call. City Clerk Joanne Marcon, will you take the roll?
Larry Jurassic,
Aye.
Stephen Knott,
Aye.
Diane Wolf,
Aye.
Mike Milky,
Aye.
Sean McAllister,
Aye.
Dan Stevens.
Aye.
Thank you. The voting was unanimous. We are in closed session. The time is 8:30 p.m.
Quick 5.
Well, I don't know if we need I don't think it's going to be long.
No, I
I think we
anticipate it
could, I
will
mean,
be,
unless it's urgent, I think we can probably just go
Yeah.
forward. If it lasts longer than 3 minutes, then we'll break.
I was going to give you 10. I'm going to stand up and stretch though, just because.
We are now in open session. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Alder Stevens, second by Alder Milky to adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? We are adjourned at 8:38.